Hello, believe it or not, but today I've got yet another IMR model for review, but this time it's IMR Elysium, one of the top of the line limited edition builds. Price was £800, but as usual those who made some purchases received discount codes, so there were possibility to get it for the lower price. I'm not sure will it be available for sale when this review will be out or not, but anyway, of course, this model will be available on the second-hand market. Probably there will be some refurbished versions for a lower price, we'll see. It's unusual hybrid NEA monitors. They use 10mm ADLC dynamic driver, that new generation of technologies that gave great low frequencies in all new models by IMR. Also here used planar magnetic driver for the mids. Actually, I'm a fan of planars on mids, and my favorite on the go earphones is IMR RA that I use for quite a long time. And also here used bone conducting drivers. Probably not that technology that was used in that poorly sounding aftershock earphones, and more reminding something that is used by Unique Melody in their Mest and other models. Anyway, model looks promising. Let's find out what we'll get. As usual, it came in signature bag with a handle on zipper, and also you'll get an additional storage pouch for everyday carrying. Still, must admit that I like this package, I like its design, I like its convenience. Inside there is a manual and traditional set of everything. So here are earpieces themselves, protected by this foam material. Let's put them aside. Set of tips, as also traditional 4 pair of silicons, pair of double flanges, 2 pair of foams of different sizes, 6.3mm adapter, traditional filters tuning systems, 8 filters for the low frequencies and 6 for treble and mid frequencies, and also 3 sets of cables. You'll get 3.5mm Pentacon and 2.5mm, each with leather stripe for organizing. Also there is a single short clip and 2 sets of spare faceplates. You can replace the stock black ones with yellow and I don't know actually, is it purple or what is the name of this color. As you can see, accessory set is really generous. And here are earphones themselves. As usual, build quality is really good. Shells are made of silver, a bit darker tint of silver metal. Black faceplate looks pretty stylish in my opinion. If you decide to swap faceplates for different color, they actually doesn't differ in terms of sound, they offer just a different color. Do it, if you decide to replace it, do it in a well-lit space and on some white background, because if you unscrew these tiny screws, actually you'll be able to open the shells. So do that carefully. Assembly quality is great, as well as the wearing comfort. So IMR returned to their previous design with smaller shells, and I still miss the previous versions of design, but this one definitely will fit more ears. There is a vent hole, and as you can see they took into account feedback for the first version of EDP, because there were complaints that they had vent holes on the front side, and when wind was blowing, so some people said that it caused some noise. So they moved a vent hole on the rear side of earpieces. They fitting nicely, they have pretty extended spout, and that spout of course is that signature tuning system. They provide slightly above sound isolation and good wearing comfort. As usual, you can unscrew the whole filter at all, replacing this part that is responsible for the low frequencies. And let's put it back. I need to hit correctly, so, or you can unscrew and replace just the upper part that is responsible for the mids and treble. So let's screw it back too. This upper part works as a lip for holding the tips, and also it has a protective grill. Here are the tips themselves, holding really well, so in terms of build quality it's good. Stock cable is also nice, it's traditional. IMR use a similar design for quite many years. They changed a little bit connectors, so now here used angled connectors, giving a bit of additional comfort. But you can use regular 2-pin connectors, so just select ones with not recessed pins. There is a ear hook, but without memory wire, and cable itself slightly softer than average, not audiophilic in terms of look, but very convenient, pretty reliable, and it's really pleasure to use it. It doesn't get hard when it's cold outside, so in terms of usability, cable is pretty nice, and it's a bit longer than usual, so you'll get additional 15 centimeters of cable freedom. And here is traditional Pentagon jack. To summarize this part, in terms of design, build quality, accessory set, and all other stuff, everything is done really great. And of course about the sound, if you've seen some IMR reviews before, you can safely skip about 2 minutes forward. Just keep in mind that burn-in is 200 hours. And if you haven't seen previous reviews, so I must admit that these earphones require a burn-in. I know that a lot of people are skeptical about burn-in, and actually I also think that burn-in is overestimated, but there are rare models of earphones that definitely changes the sound, and actually IMR models are usually among them. And Elysium is not an exception, because when you start listening them, they will start changing sound. You know, like after 6 or 7 hours they will start this change. Then it could they could sound even worse. Usually it will be about at the moment at about 70 or 80 hours. And then after 140, 150 hours, sound is settled. So I burn them in for about 200 hours to be sure that they reach their full potential. I know that it sounds strange, but just do that, it's common for these earphones. And another important aspect, besides finding the proper tips, it's also of course important aspect here is experimenting with filters and finding the combinations that will suit your taste. It's definitely a matter of your preferences, so I really encourage you not to go rambling over the forums or somewhere else asking for best combinations, because it's really likely that some combination that won't be mentioned will suit your tastes more. Usually I use red base and the black tips, and actually I like it with this model too, but currently I'm using the blue ones. I will explain a bit later why. And that's probably all I need to say at the preface of the sound review, and let's have a player on the table and talk about the sound. So, IMR signature sound is always not monitoring, not dry, and delivering something fun. And Elysium is not an exception, because here they decided to do interesting thing. They decided to create a mid-centric model with a top of bone conducting as a sparkles on top of that. I'm not sure exactly what bone conducting drivers do here, so it's just my speculations. It's partially based on the comparisons with Ra, partially based on the impressions of the Unique Melody Mass 2, so it's a bit of extrapolation. So if you're interested in my speculations, let's go on. But first let's start with bass. Here used nice dynamic driver, that ADLC drivers are really technical and really capable, and IMR have an opportunity to tune them in a wide variety of options. They can create a pretty bassy sound, but at the same time they can create more or less natural options. As usual, you can tune sound with filters, but for example Elysium is not the bassiest model. You can make it pretty bassy, but definitely it won't be as bassy as let's say Opus Mia, for example. It's impactful, tight, well-controlled bass that gives a good slam, good impact, but it's not highlighting weight, so it sounds pretty dry, but at the same time when you need kick it will deliver it. It's saturated with small nuances, so with acoustic instruments and all that wooden brass stuff, it sounds hyper realistic. It has a really good depth and goes almost to the maximum depth, so nice technical low frequencies for those who like them fast but not super dry. Of course it's still a pretty big dynamic driver that can pump a lot of air, and for those who like tightness, overweight and mass. And actually it's pretty close to Opus Melius, but a bit more technical. Probably, you know, it's a matter of tuning here because it's more limited in terms of frequency bands. It's more tied to the low frequencies here, because for mids they have a planar magnetic earphones. So it's not bass head model, but it's a model for those who like bass with ability to select the proper amount, and of course technical one, but not too dry. And first track is Diesel Power, so as name suggests it's just a raw bass power, and this model plays it nicely with enough of rumble. So if you have a vast majority of such music in your media library, probably you can select some more bassy model, of course. But if you have only part of electronic music, this model will deliver you enough of pleasure. But they unveil their full potential on the acoustic stuff and natural instruments. And the second example, it's Rock Reimagined by David Chesky and John McEuen, and track Excitable Boy. They have nice acoustic bass here, really well recorded, typical for the Chesky, and this model renders it nicely. Mid frequencies are really well balanced and they are done in a way I like it. It's planar, so it means a perfect weight distribution. You know, many people like resolution, like small details. Of course I like resolution too, but for me, you know, there is a kind of enough of resolution. I don't like focus on the micro contrast, I don't like super resolving earphones, and for me is more important is proper weight distribution, and planars cooked by IMR delivers that really nicely. Really good weight, really great body for the instruments, for the male vocals and all other stuff. Upper mids are a bit boosted, and that's giving a bit of additional clarity to the female vocal and instruments that goes to that area. But also here starts working this bone conducting drivers. There is not something that you can point with your finger and say, oh yes, that's a bone conductor. And like it was, for example, with old piezo drivers, they have signature representation of the treble that was pretty well identifiable. But here bone conducting driver just gives a bit of additional 3-dimension, bit more presence of notes, bit more of a sense of realism. So I still highlight that it's just my speculations, but probably that's what they do, because it's pretty easy to find that comparing with mids with RA, because they also use planars and minus the extended treble in RA, so treble is a bit different. And comparing basically the mids gives that idea of what bone conductors does. And they have a really good imaginary stage, maybe not the biggest, but really realistic, with proper layering and good instrument separation and good size. They are pretty critical for the quality of records, but not super critical, but still require a good tracks to show the full potential. And first track, it's Tuomas Holopainen, The Life and Times of Scrooge. I really hope that Tuomas will do more of such albums. And Goodbye Papa, it's nice orchestral track with lot of instruments. It requires technical mids, it requires good resolution, but at the same time not too going far into micro contrast because it will sound too sharp and unnatural. And this model delivers it nicely. Maybe a bit bigger stage for orchestra would be nice, but on vast majority of tracks it just delivers a good and proper size. And second track, I just couldn't skip it, it's Queen, Innuendo, good performance of instrumental part and of course great delivery of the vocals. And treble here, it's normal, but here IMR decided not to do super extended treble, so extension is just slightly above average. Probably treble is handled partially by bone conductors, partially by planars, and that means that if you really fan of treble, probably you need to look at some model with electrostatic tweeters. But treble here is normal, it has good attacks and decays, pretty realistic. It's not super forward, but at the same time not super soft, and so basically balanced somewhere in between. Not sharp, so if you treble sensitive, most probably they will suit you well. It's not 100% guarantee, of course, because if you're super sensitive, they could be sharp because they don't trying to absolutely reduce treble. But at the same time, normal resolution, proper attacks and decays, good but not great layering, and nice overtone saturation. So, you know, basically like okay, but no cigar. Treble, so good, not fantastic. Because for fantastic treble, I suspect that Astra Ultrac will give fantastic treble. Two electrostatic tweeters will deliver more of that. But still, it's nice. Nice, so, and it gives you all that you expect from the treble. And first track is Lua D'Inverno, probably Lua D'Inverno by Moonspell. I really like this album, it's, in my opinion, the greatest album in the history of metal, and it's hard to believe that such a young band at the start of career delivered such a great album, so it's unbelievable. But Lua D'Inverno, it's just intermission track with some flute playing and some acoustic guitar on top. Not superb in terms of quality of record, but still sounds nice and clean and crisp with these earphones and pretty pleasant. And John Zorn, Contempt, so it's just Zorn, lot of instruments, lot of them goes high to the treble area, saxophone and many others, and they require nice treble performance that this model delivers. In terms of pairing, they definitely require something on top level, so like DX300 and higher. Plays really well with Astel and Kern players, more or less okay with Hybe R6 2020, FIO M11 Pro. Hopefully I will test M11 Plus soon, but better to get something like DX300 and above, because it's the model that has stellar mids, and to deliver their full potential you need some technical player. And to be honest, I don't see much sense in talking about the conversions, because other models of that price range that I own, they are totally different, even in terms of representation. It's sometimes hard to describe, but you know, different type of drivers means different sound, and it's really not much sense in comparing, because balanced armatures on mid sounding more focused on the micro contrast and less weighty, dynamic drivers more weighty but at the same time bit slower, and planars are somewhere in between, mixing the both. So just a few models to work as a reference points. So Opus Melius by IMR, and basically that reference models will be by IMR. Opus Melius is, you know, different a bit. it has a bit more defined treble, but at the same time less saturated, less full, less natural mids. And on the bass they are actually more or less the same, but Opus Melius has a bit more low frequencies, here a bit less, but still a nice good amount, and you can of course tweak that with filter. Ra has a bit more extended and bit more forward treble, but less magic mids, so that it has just pure planars, and here that bone conducting drivers gives a bit of additional magic. And IMR sampler, it's more fun, more highlighting emotions, more highlighting dynamics, and this one is doing less of that, but delivering a bit more interesting upper mids, so different type of tuning. Won't do any additional comparisons, so sorry, but you know, for me it's really makes zero sense. So here was IMR Elysium, yet another great interesting model by IMR. Thank you for listening, thank you for your attention, and of course have a nice day.